Welcome to the Inspiro Podcast, the podcast exploring personal growth, leadership, strategy, communication, and fulfillment. We are your hosts, Jason Luchtefeld and Bill Woodburn. I'm here as a dentist, transitioning into a career to help facilitate individuals and their organizations towards a more fulfilling future.
Hi there, I'm Bill Woodburn, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and licensed marriage and family therapist in Austin, Texas. I'm fascinated by the way people come together to solve problems, whether that's couples or families, dental practices, or organizations. We're going to be exploring a lot of topics, and for us to be able to be free to do that, I have to let you know that this is not intended to be dental advice or counseling advice.
You mentioned, I think, some overlapping concepts here. So the idea of safety, of home, of having something that's sustainable, being able to stay engaged. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of overlap in all of that stuff. And that I think is influential in something that I just saw this week. A number of friends on social media that are dentists have talked about seeing patients that are really struggling personally. Mm-hmm. A lot more difficulty with communication, problems with like self-harm, and to a degree that has not been seen before. And these are all people around my age, so in practice 20 to 25 years, and I'm really seeing an upshoot in this kind of stuff. And I think it's particularly interesting, and I think on topic because it's something that is obviously harmful and scary, and at the same time, the difficulty in communicating only makes it worse. And so we have this real problem with communication now. And Bill and I have talked about this a number of times, where the dental office is a place where oftentimes more psychology happens than we would like. And so we, as a practitioner, we didn't get into the field. Most of us didn't get into the field for that discussion. And so we tend to avoid it, which can make things worse. Right. So as we're talking about maybe multiple concepts here, so feel free to go down whatever angle you'd like. Creating an environment, whether that's family, home family, or work family, that allows for that sustainable, engaged communication that's safe.
So what comes to mind is I think when we talk about the word safety, I think typically what comes to mind is my physical safety. And the truth is most Americans are safer than they've ever been, right? Physically, we are safer than we've ever been in a lot of ways. That's not everybody. That's a gross generalization, but in globally speaking and in history, we are safer than we've ever been physically. But what a lot of people don't know about their own bodies is that your sensory systems, your body is, your nervous system is scanning the environment for threat about 4 times a second underneath your conscious awareness. And it is using all sorts of systems in the body that aren't connected to your conscious verbal processing. So this isn't something you're aware of, and this is not necessarily something you put words to, but like if you get kind of a vibe, right, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And the problem is in our modern culture that human beings, evolutionarily, we have not caught up to what we've built. We are built for really small, tight-knit communities.
Hey, this is Jason with a little interjection here. Side note, if you want to know more about this idea of size of groups for humans, look up the Dunbar number. Robin Dunbar did some research with a number of colleagues and found that around 150 people is the most that a human can have meaningful contact with. Their research showed even various layers. So good friends around 15, friends around 50, 150 for that meaningful contact, acquaintances up to around 500, and then people you can actually recognize around 1,500. Now put these numbers against what you interact with on a regular basis, either through social media, living in a city, going to a dental meeting, etc. And it can be pretty fascinating. So check it out if you want to know more.
We are built for a lot of time together in connection. We are built for a lot of time outside and in nature. So literally, like our bodies function better when we are outdoors. Our eyes see better. The smells that come into our bodies, the energetic vibrations that come up through the ground, that all makes our body function better. That's what we are built for. We, being so smart, created a modern culture in which we encounter strangers all day long. We are surrounded by man-made things all day long. We are surrounded by sudden noises, unusual smells. We go in and out of the actual outdoor weather and then the indoor fabricated weather, I mean, there's just a barrage all day, every day of sensory information that actually tells our bodies that we are not safe. And on the subconscious level. And then our bodies are also made to move and move and move and move and move. And when we aren't doing that regularly, we spend a lot of energy just supporting our physical bodies when because they are not strong enough in a lot of different ways. I was just learning, I have learned a lot recently in the last few years about occupational therapy, because it's a huge piece of mental well-being, is that our bodies are functioning the way they're built to function. And something I learned recently that was just a huge aha for me is, like, if your core strength isn't optimal, if your core is not functioning well, if it's a little weak, then it can make you feel unsafe all the time, because you're spending so much energy just holding your body upright that you have this stress that's happening in your body. And so this is something that, like, would never occur to us in our day-to-day lives, right? But children aren't outside playing all the time like they're supposed to. They're not climbing on things and jumping off of things and in trees. And so our bodies are not developing the way that they're meant to. All of this stuff impacts our perception of safety. When we are perceiving our environment as unsafe, the energy in our bodies goes to specific parts of our brain that keep us safe. And those parts of our brain are inherently selfish, me-focused, and have a short attention span and a shortened time reference. So, and that is the opposite part of the brain that does the sophisticated thinking that we think of as when we think about human beings.
Okay, me again. If you want to know more about those specific areas of the brain, look up the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. Those are the areas she was alluding to in her description.
So we are already up against a lot just when we show up in, like, a dentist office. There's already a lot that's going on. But then we have the pandemic, where everybody isolated from each other and decided that we were all dangerous to each other, right? We feel that we're all dangerous to each other because we could get each other sick. And we haven't recovered from that at all. And what I feel like I've seen is that people spend even more. There were these systems put in place so that we didn't have to be together. And now, because we're a little bit scared and because the world can be challenging, a lot of people are continuing to utilize those systems even though they don't have to anymore. And so there's not enough human connection, I think, to counterbalance the threat that we feel on a regular basis. Add in social media, add in constant news, right? Like, even the fact that I know what's going on the other side of the world and that there's war going on, that is something that my body is not supposed to know. I'm not supposed to care about that and care about my children and care about this conversation with you guys and be able to go to work it's overwhelm. I think most of our people walk around in a lot of overwhelm every day. And I think we were already there and then the pandemic and the amount of separation and disconnect that has occurred since the pandemic and since the rise of social media and some other things. Our government's not super helpful in this area, right? They're not making me feel calm. So to me, there is a general sense in our culture that we are not caring for each other, that we are not doing okay. And when you have an everyday sense of threat, low level threat every day, all day, and then you have separation, and then you have some hopelessness, I mean, that's a real recipe for problems. And so no, I don't think dentists should, that's a big responsibility for dentists to be to be tending to, but I think we are all tending to it, whether we know it or not, whether we want to or not. There are, when you think about ways to kind of create an environment or to counteract, some of the things that I go back to are what we have learned about attachment and healthy relationships. So I can be a bit of a broken record on this idea, but there is this concept of secure attachment, right? Like when we are raised, and this happens very early in life, but when we are raised in a warm and supportive environment, our abilities, or our what's the word? Our abilities to go on and become successful adults and have successful, healthy relationships are exponentially better when we've had the first few years of our life in a supportive and warm environment. So scientists have been studying attachment for 100 years. And they have actually found, in review of all the research, they have found some really specific aspects of what creates a secure relationship. And let's see if I can remember off the top of my head. There are 5 things that they found that show up over and over and over again in secure relationships. And the reason I bring this up today is because I think this is something that we can keep in mind when we are building an office space, when we are interacting with employees, when we are in our families. This is something we can think about every day. So 5 aspects of building a secure relationship require protection, soothing, attunement, that literally just means paying attention to the other person, delight, and unconditional support. And in order to do those things, you have to be present, right? And paying attention.
We're going to let that sink in for a week.